Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for the premiere episode of Kamen Rider Gavv. Sorry I'm a bit later than I wanted on this one, but let's dive in. So if you didn't know, and I apologize for those of you that do, I just wanted to give context to my experience with Rider recently. Obviously, if you follow the channel, you know I was really enthused about Geats, really reignited my love for Rider, as you can tell. I was on a huge Rider kick last year, thank you, and that had me really excited going into Gotchard, and then unfortunately Gotchard wasn't a very great experience for me, very formulaic, with the protagonist I didn't like, so it kind of whittled away that excitement. As a result, going into this series, I'm kind of in an opposite place where I was actually really enthused going into Gotchard when it wore me down, whereas in this case, I wasn't as enthused. I was definitely hopeful that it would reignite a little bit of that spark, the spark that would light the fire into Kamen Rider enthusiasm. I don't know, I was trying to make a reference there and it fell apart. Just going in hopeful, but definitely not as excited as I was last year. And I think I kind of had this mirror effect where going into Gotchard I was excited, didn't come out so much excited. And then in this case, I wasn't going in as excited, but I definitely came out a little more excited than I was about Rider before. Not as much as Geats, I would say about halfway through. So let's dive into the positives of this. So right away, it started with a pretty fun sequence of kind of like a chase through all these different doors. It kind of reminded me of all the doors in Monsters, Inc. going to these different worlds, and it kind of set the tone for the energy of it. I thought it was a fun and intriguing start with a lot of energy. It's funny because we were talking about in the trailer how he's falling to Earth, and I thought it was like from a spaceship or something, and I think it was, but people were like, no, he fell from a plane, but he like fell out of a door and then past a plane, which was kind of fun. And just overall, this pilot had a lot of fun energy. Definitely leans into some mixed aspects, but I think it had a really good, unique energy. You know, something that I complained about with Gotchard is I feel just its general tone and presentation was very much by the numbers Rider. And so far, I think that the tone and vibe of this definitely is unique. You know, it could wind up being very, very by the numbers as we go along, but just within this episode, I think it set its own unique tone, like it gave it its own unique identity already, and I really liked it. It very much had a live-action anime feel, which often Toku can be, but I think there are some series where you can label that more so, like King Oja recently for Sentai, with the settings and the way they were dressed, very much felt like a live-action anime, almost like it was being adapted for a live-action anime, kind of like, you know, One Piece and stuff. And this very much in its style and presentation, everything from the way the characters are dressed, to the sets, to, you know, the way the action is with the gummies, and the way it, like, grows larger and absorbs stuff like Majin Buu. It was very fun. I definitely felt on the fence, like, I felt that way a lot in this episode, where I feel like I'm really enjoying it right now, but I could definitely see it going the other way. Like, I could see some of the over-the-top, more, I hate to use the word childish elements, but like silly elements, I guess, getting on my nerves over time. But I did vibe with it in this episode, and I really did enjoy that energy. It gave it its own unique style and vibe, and I liked that it already felt like it had its own identity right out the gate, rather than just feeling like a generic Rider template. There definitely was things about it that reminded me of other series, like just the general characterization. Some of it reminded me a little bit of Agito, him kind of seemingly coming from this family and being a half-breed, like, because his mother seems to be human, very much reminds me of Kiva. So there are elements that remind me of other Rider series, but maybe it's just because I'm, you know, not that much into Gotchard, but with Gotchard it just felt like they were doing a checklist, whereas this, like, it reminded me of elements of other series, but it felt like it was its own thing at the same time. Also, I really like the gummies and the way all that works. You know, the voice isn't my favorite. You know, I definitely prefer a badass voice, and it's a voice that I could see getting annoying. But I feel like in general, obviously there's different variations of voices, but I think in general you have like two sides of the coin for Rider voices for the belts and stuff. You have either cool or you have kind of silly. And if we're gonna have a more silly, fun one, it's kind of nice to actually have something different than what's usually just like Mobirit's coded constantly. Just a shrieking Oompa Loompa trapped in a driver. So I'm happy that it's something a little different, and it definitely fits the vibe of the gummies. I also really like the gummies. Like, I liked the chemis in concept, and I liked their designs, but I felt that they never did anything beyond like, hey, this is a Pokemon clone, effectively. Whereas the gummies are something familiar, yet you have their own unique identity and personality, and thus far, I find them really charming. Like, there isn't one particular memorable one. I feel like they all kind of mesh together, except for the bike one. I thought that was a fun bit where we get that CGI bike fight, and then he's like, oh, we need to make you fit into society, and that's how you get the normal Rider bike. I thought that was fun. But other than that, like, I don't feel that there's like a Hopper one that stands out. They all kind of are just this homogenous thing. But in general, I just really like them, and the way they work and the weirdness of it fits this weird alien vibe that I'm just really digging so far, and I really like that feel. So it was funny in that CGI bike fight I was just talking about, the way that the monster just transformed into a Sutek looking creature just took me right back to the Doctor Who finale. So the action was really good in this. Not that Rider action has been bad. Like when I was watching both Geats and Revice last year, I was thinking, man, Toku action can be really great. And you know, the action in Gotchard I don't think was a weak point or anything like that, but I just felt it actually reminded me a lot of watching Boom Boonjer, where I was like impressed by the acrobatics and some of the more unique aspects. Like one time they threw, one time at band camp, that just came into my head, but they threw like a shipping crate at him and he like dove through it. Like it just kind of reminded me of that. Like I don't know if they'll keep that up every episode like Boom Boonjer, but it was definitely a notably good first set of fights. The pacing of this episode was definitely brisk. You know, Toku pilots tend to be very fast and talk fast like me, but I thought this one was actually pretty well paced. Like obviously you always kind of have to quote-unquote rush out the core debut of the Rider because you want to give the audience an idea of what the Rider's going to look and feel like, and of course you're basically showcasing the toys for the kids to go out to buy them this week at Toys R Us. That still exists in Japan world, right? Anyway, just made it sound like it's its own universe as well as a theme park, but you know what I mean. Regardless, you always have to rush to that, but in general, I was happy that even though it felt briskly paced like a lot of the pilots, I like that they didn't try to introduce everything and try to in one episode. Like usually, or not usually, but a lot of the times in Rider and Sentai pilots, they'll try to cram literally everything under the sun into the first episode so they can just take off in episode 2, and you only get little hints at our secondary Rider, whose name is Hanto, I believe, and I like what we see from him so far. I like the role he's going to be playing in this world, but you just get little hints of him. We don't really get our female main protagonist until the end. We just kind of tease her. So I like that they let things breathe to introduce all the elements. Even with the villains, we only just got little teases of it and tease of the mystery, which I think they did a good enough job to keep me intrigued. Seems fairly generic so far, but I'm definitely intrigued to learn more and see the evolving mystery. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of context given, which in general, unless you know some of those trailers and descriptions, it kind of makes you intrigued in and of itself. So, bottom line is, it was briskly paced, but it introduced what it needed to, but it didn't cram everything into one episode, and I like that we're letting the introduction to the characters in this world breathe. Also, just lastly, I do want to touch on the protagonist. I overall really did like him so far. I'm not going to pretend he blew me away. I'm like, oh my god, super favorite, but the actor is just so much better than Hotaro. I don't mean to be mean about it, but it's just, he was so miscast in that, and this character definitely has those over-the-top quirky moments that aren't my thing, but A, it makes sense because he's an alien, but he's much more believable. The performance is just, I don't know, it just feels so much more earnest and right, and he has much more dimensions than just silly, and I also kind of liked the angle of him feeling guilty over not being able to protect his mother, and then seemingly not being able to protect this kid when he's losing, and kind of having this drive to be a Rider and to protect people, and then kind of achieving that at the end. I like that. So thus far, he's not like my favorite or anything, but it's so far so good. You know, he could end up getting on my nerves. Like, I didn't hate Hotaro out the gate, but at least so far, he seems like a character and an actor that won't drag the rest of the show down, and I think it was nice that there was multiple facets where I could believe him when he got serious. He wasn't totally goofy, the goofy moments weren't annoying, and the goofy moments made sense. Honestly, really the only negative or mixed aspects I had for this was just, yeah, it was a little fast, and some of the silliness was a bit too over the top. Like, it definitely felt the most kiddie in a way, but it is a kid show. But I do miss that mood Rider used to have. But I have to say, though, I did vibe with it in this episode. That's why it's more mixed, because the weird alien over-the-top tone just kind of did work for this. And I thought it was a very successful pilot episode. It didn't, like, do a complete 180 or win me over as much as Geats did last year, but it definitely reignited a small spark of enthusiasm where I really vibed with this. It was the most fun I had had with Rider, I think, probably since I watched the last few episodes of Geats, and I'm looking forward to the next few episodes. As I've said in the past, I plan on covering around the first 5 to 10 episodes. I'll see where the story goes. I think I had a similar policy with Gotchard, but, like, not enough had happened for me to stop covering it at 5, so 5 to 10, and then we'll see about weekly after that. I do plan on hopefully consistently covering it, but the weekly ones will be at least for 5 to 10. So anyways, guys, what did you think of the pilot of Kamen Rider Gavv? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.